For many years, Melissa Gilbert carried a story that didn't quite match the one audiences believed. Viewers felt like they knew her because they watched her grow up on screen, but television often creates a version of reality that feels complete while leaving out the parts that matter most. What appeared to be a soft, timeless love story was shaped during a period when she was still discovering herself. Back then, silence wasn't unusual, it was expected. Today, with more distance and perspective, that same story is being understood in a different light. Not as a controversy, but as something more reflective, a moment that asks us to reconsider how stories are made and what they ask of the people inside them. When Little House on the Prairie first entered American homes, it didn't rely on spectacle. It offered something quieter. The show told simple, emotional stories about family, hardship, and resilience. Week after week, it reminded viewers that strength often comes from connection. That tone became its identity. Families didn't just watch it, they trusted it. It felt safe in a way that television rarely does. The struggles the characters faced were real, but they were always grounded in warmth and moral clarity. Over time, that consistency turned the show into more than entertainment. It became something people leaned on, especially during uncertain times. At the heart of the show was Laura Ingalls, brought to life by Melissa Gilbert. What made her portrayal unique wasn't just talent, it was time. Audiences didn't watch a finished character, they watched a child grow into adolescence and beyond. Her development felt authentic because it was happening in real time. There was no artificial transformation. Her voice changed, her expressions matured, and her emotional depth expanded naturally. For viewers, that created a rare connection. It didn't feel like acting. It felt like witnessing someone's life unfold. That connection became even more meaningful when romance entered the storyline. The arrival of Dean Butler as Almanzo Wilder marked a shift. Suddenly, Laura's world expanded beyond family and survival. The tone softened into something more intimate. Almanzo's character was calm, steady, and patient, qualities that contrasted with Laura's energy. Their relationship wasn't dramatic or rushed. It unfolded slowly, built on quiet understanding rather than grand gestures. That subtlety made it believable, and audiences responded deeply to it. Viewers began to invest in the relationship in a personal way. Letters were written, magazines speculated, and curiosity grew. People didn't just care about the characters, they wondered about the actors themselves. Was there something real behind the scenes? At the time, there was no social media to clarify or complicate the narrative. Interviews remained brief and controlled. That lack of detail allowed the illusion to grow stronger. The love story extended beyond the script and into the imagination of millions. But behind that perception, reality was more layered. There were elements the audience couldn't see. Age, experience, and emotional readiness all played a role in shaping what was happening off-camera. What looked natural on screen required effort, adjustment, and sometimes discomfort behind it. For Melissa, this wasn't just a role, it was part of growing up under public observation. The difference between what viewers believed and what she experienced didn't disappear when filming ended. It stayed with her, quietly shaping her understanding of that time. Long before romance became part of the storyline, Melissa was already navigating an unusual life. Working on a major television series meant structure replaced normal childhood routines. School happened between scenes. Friendships existed within the industry. Life events unfolded under bright lights rather than in private spaces. It required maturity at an early age. Expectations came quickly, and there was little room to question them. That environment created discipline, but it also required emotional adjustment that most children never have to make. One of the most influential figures in her life during that time was Michael Landon. On screen, he played her father. Off-screen, he provided stability. He was known for being both demanding and protective. That balance gave Melissa a sense of safety. He treated her as a professional, but he also understood her vulnerability. In an industry that often moves too fast, that kind of guidance mattered deeply. It shaped how she approached her work and how she understood her place within it. The environment on set was structured and disciplined. There were clear expectations, and professionalism was emphasized. That structure helped maintain order, but it also encouraged a certain mindset. If something felt uncomfortable, it wasn't something to question openly. Instead, it was something to work through quietly. Gratitude was expected. Speaking up felt unnecessary when everything around you reinforced how fortunate you were to be there. Over time, that approach became internalized. As Melissa entered her teenage years, expectations shifted. The audience no longer saw her as a child. The story required her to portray emotional depth, including romantic feelings. That transition happened quickly. There wasn't time to gradually adjust. She was expected to perform emotions she hadn't fully experienced herself. It wasn't presented as unusual, it was simply part of the job. The distinction between acting and personal readiness wasn't discussed. It was assumed. When Dean Butler joined the cast, the storyline followed historical accuracy. Almanzo was meant to be older and more grounded. From a storytelling perspective, it made sense. But in practice, it created a situation where a teenage actress was working closely with an adult co-star in emotionally intimate scenes. The difference in age and experience wasn't fictional, it was real. And while everything remained professional, that reality influenced how those scenes felt behind the camera. Melissa didn't yet have the language to explain what she was feeling. She only knew that something felt unfamiliar. The adults around her reassured her that everything was appropriate and necessary. So she did what she had learned to do. She trusted the process. She focused on her work and pushed any uncertainty aside. It wasn't resistance. It was adaptation. She was learning how to meet expectations, even when she didn't fully understand them. One of the most memorable moments in the series was Laura's first kiss. For audiences, it was a milestone. It felt earned, meaningful, and emotional. Years of storytelling had built toward it, but for Melissa, the moment arrived at a very different point in her life. She was still navigating her own adolescence. The emotional weight of the scene didn't match her personal experience. It required her to perform something she was still trying to understand. The scene itself was carefully planned. Every detail was controlled. From a production standpoint, it was smooth and professional. But beneath that structure, there was a quiet tension. Both actors were aware of the situation. It wasn't about discomfort between them. It was about the reality of what was being asked. That awareness added a layer that audiences would never see. At one point during filming, Melissa's mother reacted emotionally from off-set. It was an instinctive response, one that briefly interrupted the controlled environment. Filming paused. It wasn't a technical issue, it was a human one. That moment revealed something deeper. It showed that even within a structured and professional setting, emotions could surface in unexpected ways. Eventually, the scene was completed. The episode aired, and audiences embraced it. For viewers, it was exactly what they had hoped for. It fit perfectly into the story they loved. But for Melissa, the experience was more complex. It wasn't negative, but it wasn't simple either. It became part of her memory in a way that required time to fully understand. After the show ended, the questions continued. Fans remained invested in the relationship between Laura and Almanzo. They wanted reassurance that what they saw had been real. Melissa learned to navigate those conversations carefully. She didn't deny the connection, but she didn't fully explain it either. It wasn't about hiding anything. It was about protecting something that people valued deeply. Over time, she built a life beyond the series. She experienced success, challenges, and personal growth. She spoke openly about many aspects of her life, but this particular chapter remained measured. It wasn't avoided, it was simply approached with caution. That restraint reflected both gratitude and awareness. She understood the impact the show had on people. Years later, perspective began to shift. With age came clarity. Looking back, Melissa saw things differently. What once felt normal began to feel more complex. Not because anyone had acted with bad intentions, but because the context had changed. Society had begun to ask different questions about age, consent, and emotional readiness. When she finally spoke more openly, it wasn't framed as criticism. It was reflection. She acknowledged that she had been protected, but she also recognized that the situation itself was complicated. That honesty didn't take away from the story, it added depth to it. It allowed people to see it in a new way. Even Dean Butler later acknowledged the complexity. He spoke about the age difference and how it would likely be handled differently today. That perspective didn't rewrite the past, it helped explain it. It showed that understanding can evolve without diminishing what came before. Today, the story of Laura and Almanzo still holds meaning. It remains a part of television history that people care about, but it also carries an added layer of awareness. It reminds us that even the most gentle stories can have complexities behind them. And sometimes, understanding those complexities doesn't weaken the story. It makes it more real.